Army Men is a series of video games developed by 3Do and Global Star Software. The games are based on the plastic toy soldiers, usually about 5 centimeters tall, and most commonly molded from olive green plastic. The first versions of the toy soldiers were made by Bergen Toy and Novelty in 1938. Today most Army Men are made inexpensively in China, and do not include the extensive accessories that were common in the older playsets. 3Do's idea of a strategy game using the plastic Army Men arose from the developer's desire to avoid censorship issues with the Unterhaltung Software Selbstkontrolle ratings board when publishing the game in Germany. Chris Wilson, producer of the original Army Men, explained,
"The Germans are extremely uptight about realistic violence, so Command and Conquer, for instance, changed all its units into robots and changed some of the cut scenes. But we didn't want to have to do 2 versions, and very early on in the design process we'd been planning things out with little plastic Army Men, so we suddenly realized that this was what everyone always likens a game like this to anyway."
Army Men RTS was the last Army Men game to be released by the 3Do company before they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The major franchises were auctioned off, and Army Men was purchased by Crave Entertainment. During its later years, the Army Men series was criticized by X-Play and Scene Baby of EGM for the frequency and declining quality of each new title. The official UK PlayStation magazine awarded 6 games in the series a score of 3 out of 10 or less.
Army Men: Green Rogue is an action game developed and released for PlayStation 1 and 2. The game takes the form of top-down, forward-scrolling shoot-'em-up in the vein of Commando or Ikari Warriors, but features a 3D environment with polygonal enemies, instead of 2D sprites. It features atypical gameplay, including multiple upgradable weapons with 9 levels of potency, a Biostrike Smart Bomb, and a Super Soldier mode. The story is set during the time of the spin-off series, Sarge's Heroes. Players assume the role of the Omega Soldier, a genetically modified super soldier that is composed of the DNA of the Bravo Company commandos. When the Omega Soldier is being transferred from the science facility by helicopter to a training facility, the chopper is ambushed by 2 Tan choppers, causing the chopper to crash, killing everybody aboard except for the Omega Soldier. Shot down and left for dead behind enemy lines, it's up to him to stop the Tan army. Unique to this game is the fact that all of Omega Soldier's weapons are made of metal instead of plastic. The PlayStation 2 version received generally unfavorable reviews according to Metacritic. David Smith of IGN complimented the FMV opening, but added that once the opening movie ended the quality took
what Bill Hicks called a real big F and drop off.
He continued that everything in the game was sluggish. Human Tornado of GamePro said,
"On the whole, Green Rogue is a disappointing member of the PS2's first wave of Army Men games. It's too slow to be a challenge, and the graphics don't live up to 128-bit expectations."
Army Men Air Attack 2, released in Europe with the subtitle, Blade's Revenge, is a shooting game similar to the ones in EA's Strike series. The game was also released on PlayStation and GameCube. Following the events in the first Air Attack and previous Army Men games, players control a helicopter in the Green Army against the Tan Army, working with character William Blade to defeat their enemies. The player controls a green toy helicopter through a suburban setting. The aircraft is equipped with weapons and a winch. At the start of each mission, the player can choose the helicopter model and its co-pilot, whose characteristics modifies the behavior of the airship. For example, a specialist in guns increase the accuracy of shots. The mission objectives vary. There are rescue missions, where the winch is used to collect a character or object, demolition missions, where something has to be destroyed, and escort missions, where something must be protected from enemy attacks. The game was met with positive to average reception. Game Rankings and Metacritic gave it a score of 68% and 75 out of 100 for the PlayStation 2 version. Samuel Bass of Next Gen said of the PlayStation version in its
"This tiny plastic apocalypse now may be short-lived, but it's still one hell of a lot of fun."
Jim Preston called the PS2 version
"The best-looking Army Men game ever made, and it's actually pretty fun too. We're as surprised as you are."
Unlike the first Sarge's Heroes, which was more dark in tone, this game has more of a light-hearted storyline. The sequel starts where Sarge's Heroes left off. It is announced that the POV of Field Marshal Tannenberg will end the war. Since General Plastra has disappeared, it is suggested that he has become a victim of plastrification and been trapped in the real world. The game introduces Bridget Blue, a spy for the Blue Nation. She has developed a serum that reverses plastrification. The player's job as Sarge, and sometimes Vicky, is to destroy the serum, eliminate Tan soldiers, and capture Plastra and Tannenberg. The game goes between Sarge's realistic world and our world, in which Sarge is the size of a typical plastic army man soldier. The PlayStation 2 version received mixed reviews according to Metacritic. Samuel Bass of Next Gen said that the PlayStation version was
better than the first one, but we'll be sticking with Air Attack 2 for our plastic battlefield fix.
Portal Runner is a spin-off in the Army Men series, focusing on a conflict between characters Vicky Grimm and Brigitte Blue. In this story, Vicky Grimm embarks on an adventure after receiving a mysterious package. Her quest takes her through various toil worlds, including a prehistoric jungle and a medieval castle. Along the way, she befriends a lion named Leo and rescues a wizard, Merlin. The villain, Brigitte Blue, manipulates Vicky's boyfriend, Sarge, and plans to marry him using a love gun. Vicky and Leo must thwart the wedding, stop an interdimensional attack, and return home. There are 5 worlds to travel to in the game. Environmental puzzles, platform jumping and battles against enemies constitute the bulk of the gameplay. Vicky, the player character, can shoot arrows at the enemies, and strafe to avoid their fire. Leo the lion, can be controlled either indirectly, by issuing orders to him, or in exclusive stages where he fights using his claws. The PS2 version, which received mixed reviews according to video game review aggregator Metacritic, gained notoriety when it was panned by GamePro, with a rating of 2.3 out of 5. GamePro was the first to review the game, saying that it
looks like a late-generation PlayStation title rather than a second-generation PS2 effort.
Trip Hawkins, then president of 3DO and publisher of Portal Runner, sent an angry email to John Russo, who was president of GamePro. The email was published on the internet in its entirety. In the email, Hawkins told Russo that his customers were the advertisers, not the readers, and implied that the reviews should be written to keep the advertisers happy. Hawkins wrote,
"There is something wrong with the reviewer, not with Portal Runner. If you disagree with me, you do so at your own peril. I should mention in passing that 3DO has been one of your largest advertisers. Effective immediately, we are going to have to cut that back."
Army Men RTS follows Sarge and his heroes in the Green Army, as they fight the Tan Army across a variety of battlefields, over the course of 15 campaign missions, 8 special operations missions and 8 great battles. Players command their Green troops, from the simple soldier to high-powered tanks, against a former fellow Green commander who is now leading the Tan forces. The game was the final Army Men game from the 3DO company. The familiar Red Alert style resource management system allows players to choose from a wide range of attack and defense options. Resources themselves come from siphoning plastic and electricity from discarded toys, batteries and the like scattered around the battlefield. When players lose a building or soldier, they can melt it down to rebuild a new building or soldier. Because both factions have access to the same units, or infantry and vehicles, advantage lies at how they're used. Some buildings assemble vehicles and produce soldiers and others provide defense. Production buildings can be upgraded to produce better units. Infantry troops are cheap to produce but are not as tough, while vehicles tend to be costly. Vehicles range from dump trucks and base building bulldozers to helicopters, tanks and half-tracks to suicidal robots armed with firecrackers. Aside from grunts and grenadiers, infantry units have special tasks, such as minesweepers, snipers and mortarmen. The game received mixed or average reviews, according to Metacritic. Army Men Sarge's War is the third and final entry in the Sarge's Heroes main series. It was initially developed by 3DO, but after the company's bankruptcy was purchased and completed by Global Star Software. The game is more mature and darker than earlier games in the series. Sarge makes no comical moves, holes are blown into soldiers, and the weapons are also made of metal. The game was generally rated as average or below average. Improvements on previous games included a new lock-on feature as well as the ability to blow off enemy limbs. Most reviews also said that the darker appearance was nice. Drawbacks included subpar graphics, repetitive gameplay and poor enemy AI. The main character in Army Men Major Malfunction is a soldier named Private Anderson. He is forced to fight his way through an army of enemy soldiers as he tries to defeat the main villain, Major Malfunction, who has taken over the house. The name Major Malfunction is derived from a quote in the film, Full Metal Jacket. The game is a third-person platform shooter. Players will shoot, dodge, and jump through over 30 missions. Each level has 10 service medals hidden in out-of-the-way places, which unlock extras. Weapons include, among others, the standard assault rifle, a minigun, and a bazooka, with weapon power-ups scattered around the levels. The game was widely panned by critics for its poor story, graphics, enemy artificial intelligence, and according to GameSpot its
horrible problems with aiming and camera control.
Army Men, Soldiers of Misfortune is a major departure from prior games in the series in that players assume the role of Private Timmy Reynolds who plays with toy soldiers instead of the toy soldiers themselves, shrinking down to their size to participate in a war among them. The game is a 3D third-person shooter. While players traverse the house, additional health and weapons can be picked up. The game offers 5 missions in which they have to rescue allies, disarm threats and fight of the enemies. Sometimes vehicles like tanks, jeeps and planes can be entered and used. Soldiers of Misfortune received negative reviews on all platforms, with Metacritic giving the PS2 version 22.5%.